Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the College Horizons webinar, Understanding the College Admission Process for Parents, Families of High School Students. I'm very pleased to be able to provide this to the families of College Horizons, and then we're going to also share this out publicly following the program. I do want you to be aware that we are recording this webinar. There is a feature for families that are joining on the Q&A, and that is where you can post questions for the panelists. You can also upvote if you see someone post a question that is also what you want to ask. If you upvote it, then it rises to the top of the queue for me to ask questions at the very end. So we're going to go through for about 45 minutes and then leave question and answer time at the end. So again, feel free to use that function. The chat function has been turned off. Okay, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists, please. I am Carmen Lopez, Director of College Horizons. Also joining us today are Nikki Chun, who is with the California Institute of Technology and is the Director of Undergraduate Admissions. Derek Terrell is with the Coalition for College, one of our partner organizations. Derek will also be featuring a webinar just on the coalition application following our program. Luis Trujillo is a high school counselor at St. Anne's School, and Maddie Ybarra is also a high school counselor at Santa Fe Prep School. So we wanted a mix of college admission personnel and then also the high school counselors as we approach advising sometimes a little bit differently depending upon our point of view. Okay, and I will pass this off to Derek or Nikki.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Chun, and as Carmen mentioned, I am at the California Institute of Technology. I also identify as a part Native Hawaiian, part Chinese woman from Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm a Kamehameha Schools graduate. So my connections to College Horizons run deep, and I think this is a really wonderful opportunity for your students and for families to be able to count on College Horizons as a resource. And are we going to do a round of introductions or just?
Sure. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Terrell, and I'm the Director of Member Engagement with the Coalition for College, which Carmen mentioned is a nonprofit higher ed education access organization. And it's actually formed up of over 150 different member schools. Many of those schools are actually College Horizon partner schools as well. And they're all united in their mission to support lower income, under-resourced, and or first generation to college students. And I'll pass it on over to Luis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luis Trujillo. I'm a college counselor at the St. Anne's School in Brooklyn, New York. Having been on both sides of the desk, I've been on the highly selective admission side as an associate director at Brown for 8 years, and I made the switch to the high school side about 5 years ago at an independent school in New York City. So I'm sort of full of nuggets and things to share to both the students and the families, the parents and guardians as you embark in the process. Maddie?
Yeah, my name is Maddie Ybarra, and I'm a high school counselor at Santa Fe Preparatory School in Santa Fe. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm Mexican-American and Osage from Altamont, Kansas. It's about a 1,000-person town in southeast Kansas. I attended Stanford University as an undergrad and then worked in the admission office there for a few years, and then Caltech for 5, though not crossing over, unfortunately, with Derek and Nikki. I moved over to do college counseling here in Santa Fe, home of the Towa Pueblo speaking languages, Keres and the Hickory Apache. And I'm very proud that I now have feet in both states, New Mexico and Kansas, which are represented partially by American Indian representatives in the House, Deb Haaland in New Mexico and Sharice Davids in Kansas.
So I think where we wanted to start off was to encourage parents, family members, guardians, relatives who are an important part of the scaffolding and support system for the students, to realize that you have a place in this process. In fact, you have a very crucial part of this process. What I think about is that from the more mainstream view, the kind of narrative that is out there is that this is a very individualistic kind of process. And what I think that does is it takes us away, as folks that are very much community oriented. It takes us away from this idea that when students are accomplishing what they are and when they're going off to further their education, they are representatives of the communities that have brought them into this work, into this world. So I just wanted to start off by encouraging families to realize that that centering on community does not change. It should not change. We hope it doesn't change, and that's a lot of the messaging that we are sharing with your students as this week goes on. Is that we want them to manage to bring things back to them, center on themselves, center on taking care of themselves, taking care of their families, taking care of their communities. And that's an especially important message today with COVID, that students will know that in all of what information is going to be floating around them, it's important to bring it back to themselves and bring it back to the communities. So families are especially important in helping to support that message, because you are at that core. Next slide. So really briefly from the college end of things, what we're looking for is reflected in the materials that we're asking students to produce and to submit. So you'll see that across colleges, the list itself can vary, but at the core of this list are some very common things. And it tends, the most common pieces are around the academic performance of the student. So that's reflected in requesting transcripts, requesting, where applicable, standardized test score. So we're ultimately looking for students who we know first and foremost are going to be successful students on our college campuses, and the academic piece is the most telling. And then colleges are going to be asking about non-academic factors. So we're asking about, in addition to what a student is bringing as a student into the classroom, what are they bringing as a citizen of their communities? And that is reflected often in what they're currently doing in their communities. So that is why we're asking for things like a list of extracurricular activities. That's why we ask for essays. And those are all materials that we are working with your students to develop as the week goes on. So.
All right, so I'm actually going to talk to you all a little bit about the application platform. So now working for an organization that provides an application platform, as well as formerly working as an admissions counselor, as well as doing admissions and education consulting. Applications is something that I know a lot about. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Common Application. So the Common Application is exactly what it states. It is pretty much the most common application out there. There are over 700 schools that will accept it. Your students this week will actually be working with all of the faculty members on completing their Common Application. The application actually goes live August 1, so they're working on a version that they'll be able to roll over and then use for this next upcoming year for the students that are seniors. The next one is the Coalition Application, which is run by the organization that I'm a part of. So there are actually over 150 schools that accept the Coalition application. This organization, as I mentioned before, it focuses on the tenets of affordability, access, and success. So all of those schools have met certain metrics in those areas. So we consider them as smart college choices. So As Carmen mentioned earlier too, I will be doing a session later on after the program's over to give you some more information about that as well. And then that usually goes live August 1 as well with the schools who also might use the Common Application. Some other applications that students might have to submit. There are state and system applications. So for those of you who might live in the state of California, the state of Texas, New York, or New Jersey, there is one application in which you can apply using that one application to all of the campuses there that are a part of that state or that system. And then lastly, there's something called a school-specific application. So there are some schools that will only accept the application through their own institution, or they'll accept that in addition to, let's say, the Common Application or the Coalition application. But it's just very important to know that sometimes your students, they should be applying to a few different types of schools. And sometimes it's not as easy as one application. Sometimes they do have to submit a couple of different ones. So definitely working to support them as they kind of go through this process that can sometimes be a little tedious.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and take over the next few slides. The first thing that we want to talk about is how do I apply to schools and how many and which types of schools are we talking? Derek mentioned that as students are researching lots of different options, there should be a variety of schools, not only in size or location, certainly trying to maximize the financial possibilities of different colleges and which are going to be most cost effective for you. But the other thing that we have to think about is selectivity in some ways. So we really like to use some of this terminology. Likely, I've also heard foundation would be a college that we know you're going to get into. Whether that's a public institution that has a few metrics that you have definitely hit in terms of the courses or test scores, or grades, GPA that you've already earned. Or if it's a school that we have very strong intuition that students like you or maybe that have not had as strong of academic backgrounds as you have been admitted regularly by that institution. And this is the point where we say the majority of colleges accept the majority of students that apply there. Unfortunately, College Horizons is partnered with, and most colleges that you see at the top of rankings lists are typically the more selective versions of those colleges, but there are colleges that will accept the vast majority of their applications. And so we want you to feel confident applying to at least 3 or 4 of these kinds of options, particularly if you're on a financial aid hunt. And of course, we're going to have the conversation about financial aid tomorrow. But if you're looking for more scholarship money, potentially colleges that might end up as a likely school on your list are ones that would potentially offer more merit money or offer more scholarship to attract you. The student brings up their profile, makes them look good as a college, right? The next kind of set of schools are really target schools. I sometimes think of them as a toss-up, right? You're right in the wheelhouse, you look good academically as a potential fit for them, but they're gonna get more applications than they can take. And so we don't really know, but we think that you're gonna get a very strong look in the application process, in that application review. You meet generally the admission requirements, but you might not be in the top echelon in terms of test scores, GPA, whether you're the valedictorian or top 10% of your high school, those kinds of things. But there's still really strong indicators that they'd be interested in you as a student. And then we look at reach schools. I've seen some, high school counselors call them as unlikely schools because they're unlikely for everyone. If you're looking at a college that admits less than 10 or less than 15% of their student body or of their applicant pool, chances aren't great for any of them. And my guess is the large number of students, certainly was the case when I worked in admissions at Stanford and Caltech, 2 of the most highly selective institutions in the country and in the world. There were multiple students that we would have sitting on the wait list that easily could have been admitted. There were so many students that we could have admitted, thinking back to one of the slides prior, are you academically competitive? Yes, absolutely. But we're also trying to build a community, and one that heightens and really embodies the type of spirit that we want to have on that campus. And so that's really where a lot more of the personal and holistic aspects of the application come in. That kind of second half of Nikki's slide about your essays, about your recommendations, about your personal qualities, about your presentation in the application. Maybe there's an interview, right? And so there's all these other pieces where they try and learn more about who you are. But at the same time, in building the list, you don't want to stack your list with 8 or 10 of those reach schools. You want to give yourself the best chance. Typically, the most selective institutions have the more arduous or more difficult, more painstaking application processes and more essays and other things. So use your time and energy wisely. We want you to focus in on the schools that fit you really well. A lot of our small groups today are talking about college fit. And what makes you a match for that institution, because that's going to make you or equip you with the ability to write more compelling essays as to why you fit with that institution. And so we want you to be smart about which colleges you reach for, but we also want you to be, aspirational about the school that you're shooting for, and the one that you really think would heighten your experience, would surround you with the best possible resources. We want you to have a top choice or a top 5 choices or whatever that is. Typically, when I make a list, the high school that I work with, our average application numbers are about 7 or 8 a student. I think, when you're building a list like this based off likely, target, and reach, you really want to look at 10 maybe, and then be 2 or 3 reaches, and there'd be 3 or 4 target. And you'd want to think about kind of a pyramids setup. You want more in that foundation or the likely ones that you can use to maybe compete for money, right? We can go to the next slide there.
If I can just add in
Yeah,
really
please.
quickly on also the College Horizons context with our partner colleges. I do want families to understand that there is no special guarantee of admission for College Horizons students to be admitted to one of our partner schools. That's not what happens in our program. So again, parents, just understand that participating in our program does not guarantee any sort of admission to one of our partner colleges. The founding of College Horizons was that we believe that Indigenous students need better financial aid from colleges and to be packaged fully with demonstrated need. And so the colleges that partner with College Horizons, the vast majority of them are able to meet full demonstrated need. And these are the colleges we want to put in front of families and students to consider. So that's one really important part is thinking about the match side. It's very much geared towards institutions that have larger endowments to provide that financial aid. But it is also true at the same time that they are competitive colleges for competitive admission. And that's what we're teaching in our program is also how to prepare for competitive admission. The other important thing to know about our College Horizons students is that about 40% of them are matriculating onto one of our partner colleges. That means that 60% of our students are going to amazing colleges outside of the College Horizons family. Of the 3,000 students we've served, they've gone on to about 700 different colleges. And we tend to push at College Horizons 4-year degree institutions that have residential 4-year of residential housing as well. So we kind of have criteria of what we want and we think is the best for Native students. But we also look at other institutions outside of College Horizons partner schools, regional schools, state flagship schools. And then, of course, if students are interested in international studies for their undergraduate degree, and additionally, students that are also interested in tribal colleges and universities that have a particular focus on either cultural programming or some really great art programs that certain tribal colleges are known for, then those are also on our students list. So we're going to build out a full list for the students. So that's just a little context about the College Horizons students in the program and the diversity of colleges that they also end up attending.
Thank you, Carmen. I think also almost every college is going to have some sort of mission statement, and most of those mission statements mention diversity. mention a desire to diversify their thought among the people that are part of their community. And I would say that the College Horizons partners are making one extra step of saying, no, this is really important for us to at least, showcase ourselves in the context of what other colleges they're going to see. And be able to explore because they have more information about those institutions. The next section that we'll talk about is kind of the type of admissions, and we'll show you a timeline in a later slide to walk through what those really look like. But you should be aware that there are a few different ways in which you can apply. The base is either rolling or regular decision, which you see at the bottom of the slide there. Rolling admission means that a college will make admissions decisions as they roll through. So you may submit your application in September and find out in 2 weeks about that application decision. And those are nice because if they have priority deadlines that might impact housing or scholarship money, you want to get in earlier because they give away more spots at that point. But then also you have more of a sense of confidence because, hey, I've applied to a rolling admission place and I've been admitted. Many places that have rolling admission are less selective in that process. Regular decision generally is January 1, January 15. I've seen some February 1. There are some that are later in the process. But regular decision is where all colleges get the bulk of their application process. And so you might have a college that gets 5,000 applications in early, but they get 25,000 applications in regular. You might have a college that gets 800 applications in early, but they get 3,600 in regular, right? And so they're trying to fill the rest of the class, but that also means that early action or early decision is typically used to identify, is this a top choice school of yours? In early decision, whether 1 and 2, and I'll talk about the differences of that, early decision is really you saying, this is my favorite place. I want to be there. If you admit me, I would want to be there tomorrow, right? That sense of enthusiasm for the institution. And colleges reward that. In some cases, they might admit double the students in early decision in terms of the admission rate because they know those students are bound to go. And it's really the binding commitment of early decision that separates early decision and early action. Early action is not binding, but you would still find out earlier, right? So many deadlines will be November 1, November 15, sometime December 1. And for most cases, you might find out before the winter break, maybe even the first week or 2 of January, in time potentially to reorient your list. So you might have had 10 schools on that list, get into 2 places early action, and then cut the list down and only apply to 6 or something like that if you're happy with the financial options that you're looking at. The differences between early action, there's restrictive early action and open early action, the way that I like to put it. Restrictive means you can really only apply to that one place early. They want to hear that you're they're your top choice, but they also don't want you to play the field. And so they want to limit the number of applications you can put out in that way. It's not exclusive, so you can still apply to as many regular decision application places that you want, but restrictive early action or single choice early action, as it's sometimes called, is really that one place that you're hoping to find out from. Early decision 1 is just means earlier in the timeline. Most of those are November. Many schools might have early decision 2, which still is binding and still gives you the chance to say, yes, if you admit me, I'm coming. And sometimes that works out to a place where a student will say, I want to apply early to this one place, get deferred, or maybe not be admitted and denied at that institution. And then they go to number 2 on their list, and that has early decision 2. And absolutely, if you take me, that's now my new number 1. So it potentially could transition in that way. Anything else anybody want to add on these?
Yeah, can I ask you a question? So, if I'm thinking about, in you're working with families, do you find that the priority is for families to understand all this terminology this intricately, or is there some other role that families are better to fill while the students are maybe trying to navigate this with either their counselors or with their College Horizons faculty? I mean, is this something that families are really wanting to know this intimately?
I think that it's difficult and it's a lot of jargon, a lot of different terminology, and unfortunately, not every college is the same. They all write their own policies on how to do this. I also think that there is a benefit, like I said, to some students applying early decision because colleges want to reward that and fill their class as soon as they can in a more confident way. And unfortunately, that's created more bias in the process. Many students that are going early decision are from more wealthy means and are from white backgrounds. So this is another way for you to take a look and see, is this really the place that I look at? Have I done enough research about this? Am I really confident about this institution? And the one thing I will say that families are really critical in this stage, particularly deciding between, do I apply early decision or early action? Is early decision is a binding commitment and therefore there's money tied to it. There's a thing called the net price calculator, which you'll talk about tomorrow, that families really can help students take care of so that they have a really strong picture as to what financial aid is going to look like from that institution should you be admitted. However, early decision is binding up to the point where you get the financial aid offer and it doesn't work out. And then you can say, no, the money's not right and we have to go elsewhere. And the college can't say that you have to come to that and have to pay them.
And I'll just add to this too, in thinking about this time that we're in. One of the parts of our goal in being good relatives with the students and to offer reassurance to families is to try to remove some pressure from this year's cycle. And so I really believe that for parents, if you don't know all of the differences between this is okay. And I also really think that kids need more time this year. And again, I just was checking out our college profiles of our own colleges, and even though the majority are still currently keeping their deadlines, I still have a quarter that say it's to be determined. So even right now, they're starting to firm up when some of those deadlines are going to happen. So in this time, though, I think we need to relieve pressure for students. Early decision, early action creates a certain type of pressure to get ready even quicker. Plus, as Maddie said, you really have to know if that is the right fit and match. If your child is not at that place or you're not at that place as a parent in understanding it, then regular decision is perfectly fine to alleviate some of the stress and to give yourself more of the time to make a good decision. Especially in this year, I really think financial fit, right, is going to be an important thing for families. And if you need a little bit more time, that's okay. It's not, there's not these penalties, although there are some other opportunities for kids who go early decision, early action, as Maddie said, but it's also not gonna, it's not a bad thing to use the regular decision deadline. So that's, again, to ease the stress of this time.
Yeah, I want to leave this slide saying that most places still admit the majority of their class in regular decisions. There's still more spots available in regular decision. And also thinking about pressure, I think that I really like when students apply early action, not necessarily restrictive or single choice early action. And I really am wary of early decision, but early action in some ways alleviates that pressure because you know a response from at least one college. And that may mean that you're not having over the winter break to fill out 10 more applications of regular. There are some students that apply only regular decision everywhere, and you might not hear until early March from any of those institutions. And for some students, that anxiety can feel like you're sitting on pins and needles. And so I do want you to, talk with the CH staff or whoever the list maker is in the small group with the student to map out what that pressure and stress is going to look like over that timeline. So this slide is just basically to cover what is the possible outcome of those applications. Could a student be admitted? Yes, that's what we're looking for. That's very exciting. We're really happy for them. If they're admitted, they usually have until May 1 to make up their mind. Even if that's an early action decision that comes out in December, they have those still 4 months to make up and get to know the institution better to make up that choice. You may be denied, and depending on the selectivity, that may be more of an understanding because there's so many students that are applying. But at the same time, you should be looking at the list in terms of likely and reach and have a decent idea as to which ones may turn out as a deny decision for you. If you're deferred, that's really when you're applying early and they ask to look at your application again later when they're looking at all the regular decision applications. And you do have a chance usually to improve your application, whether that's adding in a recommendation letter or writing in an update essay about other activities that you've been doing since you initially applied. Waitlist is a potential, particularly with regular decision applications where they have admitted their class. They're waiting to hear what those responses are going to be, because if you're admitted, you don't have to go unless it's early decision. And usually by May 1, sometimes they can go earlier to the wait list, but they might reach out to find out, are you still interested in this place? How interested are you? Are you excited about the possibility that if we have room, we might take you still? And then just to walk through the timeline, and I know we're coming short, so I want to try and move and give Lewis some more time toward these later slides. But we mentioned the Common App and the Coalition going live August 1. Some of the dates that are grayed out on your screen are testing dates for the ACT and SAT. And certainly we've heard so many stories about students trying to sign up for tests, register for tests, and not getting placement in them. Not being able to do it in the month that they want to. I expect in the fall more high schools to deliver the test to their own students specifically. I also think there's pressure on colleges to maybe start administering the exam on their campuses. There's still, a lot of possibility and flexibility, but part of that is that so many colleges are moving this year specifically to test optional because they know that it may just not be an option for you to prepare for and take an exam that could be used in the evaluation process. So those dates are on there to try and give you forward thinking, but at the same time, that's another piece that's adding a lot of pressure and anxiety, and we just really want to support you as you're trying to figure out, the helplines with ACT and SAT and how to make that happen. One of the things that's listed in August is a college list and also fly-in applications. And those typically this year, I think, are going to be virtual, but it's another chance for colleges to really reach out to students that they're targeting with their admission goals and to say, hey, have you really taken a deeper look at this institution? It might be the place for you. If they do happen on campus, then they may be still very competitive. Sometimes I've heard colleges only allowing or admitting students to their fly-in programs at like 30%. But at the same time, your college list maker is going to walk through like what those opportunities might be really good for your particular student. And those might be regional open campus days that serve the same type of purpose. Nearby on different college campuses, larger publics, or they might be more selective institutions, and that can be a good way for you to get your not full application, but information in front of a college for the first time. September, we want you to work and finalize and edit that common application to finish off that personal statement that you should be working over potentially this summer, but certainly the early part of your fall term. Supplement essays. If you're applying to a college that's part of the common application or the coalition, there's a very good likelihood that it's not just the personal statement, that 650-word essay that you're writing. They might ask for another 1 or 2 200-word sample essays. And those are looked at just as critically. So we want you to spend time looking at them, brainstorming for them, editing them. And this is another place where families can really play a role to get another set of eyes, another run through, and telling the right story there. School visits, if you go to a high school where colleges go and visit them, that might be, again, virtual opportunities. I've seen so many other virtual opportunities pop up in terms of webinars. Our college fair during College Horizons is going to run much similar. So get onto college Instagram profiles and social media accounts to see if they're offering more information. Also, there's a chance to do maybe virtual campus tours and be able to see the insides of buildings and what the dorms look like and that kind of thing. Scholarship opportunities.
Matt?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just wanted to do a time check, and I'm thinking about some of the parts that I was hoping to hear from Lewis about understanding the process. And so I was just wondering if maybe we could offer that these resources could be made available to
Yeah.
families, so that as they're going through this, it's something to fall back on. So yeah, I was wondering if maybe there's an opportunity for us to
Sure. Yeah.
be able to.
I want to talk about scholarships real quick, just on the timeline, and then we can move on from there.
Sure. I think though tomorrow is going to cover quite a bit of that as well. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, on the slide it says December 1, but I wanted to call attention particularly that as you're looking for national scholarships, some of them might be earlier than that. And so you just need, like, this is another place for families to keep a log and to help coach students through the process, because it's a lot of information to handle. The Coca-Cola scholarship, for example, might be the end of October. Gates scholarship is mid-September. If you live in New Mexico, the Davis scholarship is going to be October 16th as well. And then the other thing with scholarships this year, particularly, is just to check and see if they have updated their testing policies, because many scholarships have always required testing and they may be slow to change them. But with so many colleges going test optional, they may loosen the reins on the scholarship process too. So these are some dates just to pay attention to along those deadlines. As I mentioned earlier, early decision typically happens in the fall, but early decision 2 might be another round that might come around in January. And certainly that's a conversation we're all willing to have at more context and depth later on. And then the last thing on that slide that I should mention is fly-in programs in the spring. We hope that colleges will certainly be in session in the spring, but if you're admitted to an institution, it's not impossible to go and visit. Many colleges set aside specific money and funding to fly students out to come and see their campus, particularly in April before the May 1 decision date. So if you've been admitted, haven't been there to see it, let's go and see the campus and get a real feel as to whether or not this is a good fit. And really a place that I think I can thrive.
Great, thank you for that, Maddie. So, I want now that you've seen sort of the lay of the land and the different moving parts of it, what I'll share with you, it's really comes from both the experience of being on both sides, but also interacting with both parents, families, and students. Essentially, I'll start with sort of the tips of this for the seniors, the solid takeaways, and then I'll get to the more philosophical piece in a little bit. One is that you have to remember that there are 2 processes happening. Yes, you're applying to college, but you're also applying for financial aid. There are a lot of things that are happening, which is why I always tell my students, you have to be organized. You cannot think, oh, I think I'm going to remember it. I think I'm going to put a reminder on my phone. Please be very vigilant about this. You can create a family calendar. You can create an Excel sheet that has both the college as well as the financial aid deadlines. I've heard many students say, I put my college scheduler on my refrigerator. Others, they put it on their doors, on their walls. Whatever you get to do to remember things, do it. You know yourself. Etiquette, and certainly around email account. I know that for those that are at College Horizons, and for those of you that might be watching this and are not part of the program, it really actually professionally makes sense to create an email account so that you can centralize all of your communication with colleges. You may have a school email address, you may have a personal email address. I personally would deter you from not using a high school address, because that will become inactive after you graduate. And you obviously want to be able to have some transition between senior year and your potential first year of college. To that point, and dealing with high school students as I do every day, please, 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 please check your email frequently. Check it as often as you do Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. That's how much I would want for you to remember, because a lot of the updates, if things are missing, any interview requests, they go directly to your email, so you want to be on top of Voicemail, you might dismiss it as, oh, that's an old person thing. It's not. It is very much something that colleges and scholarships use. So if you haven't had the chance to set your voicemail up, please do that. It can be a very, very short greeting. It can be the default greeting from your phone, just as long as you're able to check any messages. And really it comes down to the fact that you're taking stock of every opportunity that can come your way. If you're not a senior, but you're a rising junior, rising sophomore, and a freshman, what should you be doing about the process? I think certainly if there are any college fairs, any events, any college nights that come through your city, your high school, please sign up for those. Those are great ways to start learning about specific schools. Certainly, I think focus on grades. At the end of the day, you're going to college to develop your mind academically, and colleges want to see what have you done in the classroom. So that's very, very important. Certainly, extracurricular activities are essential. Colleges want to know what you're doing, as well as leadership and how involved you are with your community. I want to be mindful of this because you might think, oh, I do not have this leadership opportunity at my high school debate team or whatever it might be, but I'm taking care of my siblings. That is actually something that is meaningful. In my opinion, anything that takes up your time is important. So I think do remember that. If you have the chance to visit colleges, if they are open, I know we are in this unprecedented time of closures across the country, but if there is a chance to visit some in person, it might be a good thing to do. Apply to fly-in programs, and certainly any visits that are sponsored by the college. Specifically for juniors, it might be worthwhile signing up for some of the scholarship search engines like College Greenlight, Big Future, FastWeb, and Chegg, and those are personalized to both the geography and the grades and the curriculum that you have, and those are immensely, immensely helpful. But do remember that you don't have to wait until junior year to start thinking about scholarships. So the search can actually start for scholarships in the 9th, 10th, as well as the 11th grade. It's never too soon to start that. What about for families and parents? I think that's a really, really important piece as well. While the process is student-centered, you as the family unit and the parents and the guardians are supporting the student and elevating the student. What should you be doing? Certainly accompanying and attending any college nights or junior nights that are offered by your high school, potentially making that connection with a college counselor or a guidance counselor if that's available at your school. Certainly think about setting up an email account just for this, like the student advised was, to centralize all the communication. It might be actually worthwhile to stay organized and create a new email account so that you can be aware of any updates. And this is probably the most important part, which is the income tax information. W-2s, 1040s, all of that paperwork is essential in applying for financial aid, and most of that will be talked about tomorrow. But that's something that actually it is your responsibility as a parent, guardian, as a family unit to think about, because that is something that you can control. But most importantly, I want you to sort of step back. And I know that we've covered, 50 minutes of chatting, of talking about the process. And I tell this to my students, take a step back, breathe. Having counseled many, many students, this is a really challenging process. There are a lot of moving parts, but focus on the things that you can control. There is actually a lot that you can control. And in that, just being mindful and grounding the process as to where you are. As Nikki mentioned at the very beginning, this is a process that is highly individualistic. It makes you ask questions about yourself. But I also want you to reconcile that while that is true, never forgetting that you're part of a bigger collective, that you're part of a bigger community. And that is actually a really, really powerful dynamic to have, because it actually can empower you to really reach those goals that you're setting yourself as you head on to college. So I'll stop there. And I think Carmen, we might have questions for Q&A.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so again, I see some questions coming in. You can, I think, vote up if you have the similar one, but I'm just going to go down the list. I'll have a couple, I'll direct to specific people to answer so that we're not repeating things. Okay, one is on the ACT being canceled. Will more schools be going test optional? Nikki, I'll have you take this one, and then I'll add a little from what I see with our College Horizons partners.
I think that particular question is a little more challenging to answer without making it seem as though we're speaking on behalf of other schools. So I'll frame it in watching the behavior and patterns of schools so far as we are getting closer to some of our more traditional deadlines in the fall, that schools are finding that they do need to visit their policies and visit their practices. So I think that the best thing families can do is work with the information that they have at the moment. They are making these decisions and looking at these schools. And so I think it is very likely we'll see schools making these kinds of decisions. But I don't know that it needs to be something that is central to a student's decision to apply at this time. It is a ever-changing wave of decisions.
And I'll add from the College Horizons side that of our partner colleges, the vast majority are going to be test optional for this coming 2020-21 year. Even though we had maybe about just under half of our colleges had been test optional prior to the pandemic, the other quarter started to come up and also say that they would not be requiring it potentially for this year or 2 years. We will post again on our social media and for the students in the program, but again, we're going to put more resources on our website once we wrap up the week. But there are a couple of places that you can check. NACAC, the National Association of College Admission Counselors, has a kind of a running track of updates from colleges with their deadlines to apply as well. And then the other one that we also promote to our students is Fair Test. And they are a resource that focuses on test optional and test flexible schools. And they are also keeping a list of the colleges that are temporarily going test optional for this coming year, 2021. And again, some are doing it 2021, 2022. So again, just as Nikki said, colleges are more and more updating as we're getting closer to the fall season. I will say from the College Horizons perspective, the advice that we are going to be giving our students when they do their test prep session in a couple of days here is that if they, as they build the list of schools that they're applying to, if those schools are test optional for this coming year, then we don't want a student to take that exam. We want them to be safe first in taking that exam if they have to. But the priority has got to be our student safety around these tests. So for parents, you need to put that as your priority first, and and really look at whether or not the college is requiring it. There's no wink to this, meaning that test optional doesn't mean like, well, you should because you could, so we're expecting you. That is not what colleges are saying, and that's a big myth, I think, that's going on out there, that I will still have an advantage or I'll have a disadvantage if I do not take this exam. So parents, we have to be kind of clear to you that there is not an advantage or a disadvantage for our students if that college is test optional for this coming cycle. So don't put the pressure on a child to be studying for that when they could be putting their effort into their transcripts this year and the classwork that they need to be doing. So again, we're trying to relieve pressure, relieve stress, and think about where do we put our emotional energy still, because we're not done with this pandemic. We're still probably doing hybrid and remote going into K through 12 this coming 6 months. So we're not out of this yet. So we want to reduce stress, emotional stress, and think about the well-being of our children. So again, I just want to be clear, and that is from our College Horizons point of view, us as the organization and the messaging that we're going to be having with our students. Each college is going to tell you what they're going to tell you, but that is what we're trying to tell our students in terms of well-being. Okay. All right. Let's see. Next answer is, this is going back to maybe Maddie, if you want to take this one, the suggestions for students applying to 10 colleges in one area, another 2, another 5. So that could potentially be near 10 to 20 colleges that could become expensive. So just say a little bit about application fees. I'll say something about College Horizons.
So in terms of those 3 different categories, we want you to apply more to likely schools because we know that there may be more money and that there's less pressure when you've been admitted to, 2 or 3 schools already when submitting maybe other applications in regular decision. For our target schools, we think, maybe 3 or 4. Those are the schools you really get to know well. And are hoping that it'll turn out for you. And then the reach schools are more of the, like, everyone's trying, but who knows? And so we really want to cap it at 10 total. If we can, for some students, especially if financial aid is on the hunt, you may end up applying to more. But if financial aid is that strong of consideration, it's likely you might be eligible for a fee waiver. And that fee waiver might go to all of the schools that you apply to. In fact, even with public institutions that don't have a fee waiver or are not on the Common or Coalition application, you and your counselor at your high school might be able to request a special fee waiver just for you. So it's more about communication and planning. But yes, absolutely, college application fees have driven up and it's become more and more expensive. Another way that colleges have forced students to pay more money in this process is to pay for test scores to be sent from the ACT or the SAT. And now there's a big movement in colleges to now accept self-reported testing, where a student could download a score report and send it to the office. All the colleges have different policies on that, but there are a lot of little tricks like that and little steps to try and keep the college application process more cost effective and not, exorbitant, not so large of a money, investment that before you're even paying tuition or room and board or anything.
And so I want to add in terms of specific to College Horizons partner schools. So a majority of our partner colleges provide fee waivers that's need-based, so based upon a family's income. And tomorrow we'll go into this a little bit more, but families, I want you to understand too, sometimes as parents, as families, we think we don't know what that means. Need-based, what is the threshold? If I make X amount of dollars, do I have to be super poor to be able to apply? I mean, we have a hard time talking about our finances. And in the program, this is why we have you submit your taxes to us, so we can run an expected family contribution to help get a sense of where the family is at. So what I would say about the fee waivers especially is that many families will qualify for fee waivers within the College Horizons cohort, and that our students should be asking for those fee waivers. That's first of all. So it's usually based off of need. We do have some College Horizons partners who waive the fee just because of them being a College Horizons student. So that's one of the benefits of coming into our program, and we'll share that with the students as well. And that's not based on income necessarily. And then we do have a couple couple of partner colleges who have no application fees, and that's an important thing for students to be looking at, is that there are some colleges who are removing that application fee as a barrier to them applying. The last thing too is that College Horizons, we have an ability to also request fee waivers for our students as well through NACAC. So that's another thing, is if you've worked with your school counselor and have gotten through as many fee waivers as you can, we can also, and we have to do it based upon need as well. And that's partly why we collect your financial information, so we can verify and say, yes, this family is one that needs it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another question here. Or Derek, did you have?
Yeah. If I can just add one thing. So one of the things about the coalition application, if you receive free or reduced federal aid, or free or reduced lunch, sorry, or you receive a fee waiver for ACT or SAT, those are questions that are asked in your coalition profile. And if you answer yes to that, you're automatically granted a fee waiver to all 150 plus schools that are on the coalition platform. So especially for students where that might be the case, the coalition application might be something that you want to actually think about using.
Okay. Next question, it will be about looking at evaluation of grades for a high school senior this year. So from their junior spring to their senior fall, how are colleges looking at the grades? And this person had heard that they would be thrown out. I know that's not the case. The interesting thing through College Horizons, as we surveyed our seniors, the current class of 2020, and then the rising seniors, the vast majority of our students, they still got grades. It didn't go to a pass-fail. It seemed more on the college side, classes went to a pass-fail type of system. But in K through 12, for our high school students, the majority of students still had grades on their transcripts. So again, maybe Nikki and Derek, if you might want to talk about how you think in terms of the evaluation, schools will look at that transcript. And maybe then the next question I'm going to add on to that, if colleges went test optional, then what does that mean for students' transcripts and academic work this year in their fall?
So I think I'm going to go back to the review that is done with the context of the students' circumstances. In this case, it is a shared global circumstance that we, in addition to looking at coursework and grades, we're also looking at things that, for schools that are asking for information from the students about, asking for information from the teachers. We're often looking at and evaluating a student's performance with some of the context that's shared by teachers or counselors. But we're going to take into consideration the fact that students have been impacted, and everybody has been. And even before this, we were looking for more reasons to make a case for a student to become a part of our community rather than not. So I think I'm a little bit thrown by the idea that anybody's under the impression that a school is going to be reckless or careless with the information that's provided to us. We're going to treat it with the care that it deserves, and I would very much hope so. I rely on that amongst my colleagues. And so I hope that students know that we're always looking for, we're always examining patterns. We're examining more than just a numeric GPA. There are a lot of dimensions to taking a look at a student's academic performance, and then trying to connect that to what kind of performance we would anticipate the student would have at our particular school.
Derek, do you have anything to add, or is that good? Okay. All right. All right, so I'm going to go on to take the next ones here. The test optional again. If I think I answered this one, that there's not an advantage or a disadvantage if a student is chooses test optional. No, and many of the colleges that have been test optional prior to the pandemic, they have developed their own systems of looking and evaluating a student academically. So no, there's not going to be you're not more desirable or less desirable because of that, choosing test optionals or not. Okay, so let me go to the next one would be, if there's a sense of changes in tuition and fees due to the pandemic, and if the move is distance or residential or some kind of combination, and then if there's any pros and cons of attending a top tier school, if they're attending virtually. I'm gonna take a stab at this one from, I think, the College Horizons perspective, and then Nikki and Derek, if there's any other thoughts around this one. But there is a lot going on around tuition and tuition discounts. There's some lawsuits that are also going on. I presented on this back in April still. So there's still going to be more coming out by institutions. I think the other thing that we're going to be finding out too for enrollment for the fall is as colleges still had needed the time to know if their campuses were actually opening and at what capacity. And then based upon that, what does that mean in terms of revenue coming in? So I think there's a lot of articles out there on this. And I think in this coming month of July, we're really going to start to now get solid answers from higher ed around this. So yes, there are discussions about, and it's all dependent too. This is the other thing with our colleges and universities. They are all making their own decisions about this. So it's going to be varying. Some colleges have already said that no, they are not going to change the cost, whether they're virtual or not. So it's all dependent upon the institution that a student would be attending. Nikki, do you want to add something?
I wanted to take a few steps back, and this is very much my just as much my personal perspective, informed by my professional work and history in working with higher education. I think that higher education is seeing a very big wave come through, and I think it is indicative of change, transformative change that is about to happen, and I personally welcome it. I think there are too many things systemically that have caused higher education to be built for and built by not us. And I think that COVID has helped to facilitate this change. And the reason I say that is because related directly to tuitions and fees, yes, colleges are scrambling. They may not show it, but they are scrambling to figure out their business models, because their business models predicated on a certain flow that is not happening anymore. And I think that it's a challenge being put to leadership. I think it's a challenge being put to higher ed altogether. I have no idea how it's going to unfold. But what I am very much hoping for is that the system begins to fix itself, because it has existed way too long for not us and not our students. And so I think that the other part that I'm looking forward to seeing examined is this idea of, if not brick and mortar, then no, because I think that undermines the idea and the what I believe to be the intellectual property of our faculty and our professors. Intellectual property as we live in a virtual world, digital world, I think we could agree, can be delivered just as much by a distance as it can in brick and mortar. So I find myself becoming very squirmy as I watch these mainstream conversations happen, where folks think that it's just so dichotomous. So I hope that as you're looking at schools, whatever schools those are, you're not only looking at the school, but you're looking at the folks who are teaching there. You're looking at the faculty, and you're deciding, are these the kinds of folks that I want to be learning from, or I want my students to be learning from? Because chances are pretty high that if the college keeps on going, they're going to continue on with the same people. So I think change is coming, and whether students wanted to be a part of this or not, they are right here in the Riptide. And I've been working with students who are recognizing that change, and I'm looking forward to them leading us through this, because I really don't know how else we're going to make it through this in higher education.
Thank you. And I think we're at the 2 o'clock hour, and these faculty also have to get back into their small group sessions here. And I'm just taking a quick glance at some of the other questions that we might be able to
As you do that, can I mention one thing?
to respond to. Is it, Maddie, what is it in relation to? Because I want to go ahead and close this out.
Just something Nikki said. In order, like, I think we're very excited about the potential changes, and test optional is one that is a good instinct move and signal of what that change might be in the future. But I also want to say that the colleges that offer significant need-based aid, to my knowledge, I haven't seen any that have committed to meet full need and then have changed that policy given COVID. And so these circumstances are still not, like, even if the cost is the same or still prohibitively high for many families, if you fall within those parameters that you're going to receive a lot of need-based financial aid, those colleges would still be there to support you, whether you're learning virtually or not.
Okay. All right. And for some of the remaining questions too, those might be things that we can put together in a resource. Again, I just need time. We got to get through the program, and then we're going to have some great resources developed out of this. And again, parents, both College Horizons parents and families, and then to the public as well. We're going to keep on working with you and your students through the next 6 months again. So because we're also learning and responding to updates from our colleges, we have to continue to keep giving you information, especially for our rising seniors. So just know we're going to be offering updates every couple of weeks, again, bringing back other College Horizons partners to help talk what's happening right now and to be giving advice, because again, we have to see how the country is opening, how different parts of the country is opening, what schools are doing. We're still figuring this out together. So just know that we're going to continue to have updates and be able to answer more of your questions as they come in on both the process and then also on in terms of the financial aid, which we'll go into tomorrow. So I want to thank the panelists again for helping to start the conversation, get us thinking about this, and I appreciate you and your time in helping to deliver the College Horizons programming to our students, families, and then to the larger public. So I appreciate you, and I'm sorry you've got to get back into your small group classrooms right now. So thank you all again for participating today.